So good morning, everybody. Welcome to our rearranged date for the third in our series of looking at new approaches to collecting. In a moment, I'll hand over to Kris, who's going to facilitate today, and then he will introduce our guest speaker for today, who's Sarah Priestley from Watford Museum. I'll just do a quick bit of housekeeping. So for those of you who I've not met before, my name's Fran Stovold, and I'm the Workforce Development Lead for Sporting Heritage. So I look after the webinar programme, the networks and the conference. If you haven't got conference dates in your diary, it's coming up fast. It's the Wednesday the 20th and Thursday the 21st of October. I know that Kris is going to talk a little bit about a panel that he's got going on at conference. If anybody has any problems with their tech today, if you drop out, please just rejoin using the same details. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room. If for any reason the tech fails at our end, we will try and get up and running within the same time frame. If anything happens that means we can't, I will drop everybody a line and let you know where we go from here. You're welcome to keep your cameras on or cameras off as suits you. We are recording this session, so it will go up on our YouTube channel. And just to let you know, we will have a bit of Q&A and discussion at the end. So I hope you will come with questions and a feeling. So I think that's everything that I need to say. Kris, I'm going to hand over to you to start the session.
Great. Thanks very much, Fran. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. We're delighted to have been able to reschedule this workshop. It's one I've been looking forward to for a little while. So this is, as Fran mentioned, the third in a series of workshops that we've been delivering, looking at, sorry, before I begin, actually, I'm just going to share my slide. I forgot to do this last time. And right, can everyone see that? So this is the third workshop 3 in a series of workshops looking at new approaches to collecting sporting heritage. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background to the workshops and where they've come from and the projects that these workshops have come out of. And then I will introduce our speaker today, Sarah Priestley from Watford. And after Sarah has talked about her work, we will have an opportunity for questions and discussion. In the past 2 workshops, we've found that that's been the most kind of interesting and fruitful part of the workshop, allowing people the chance to talk about the themes and the topics we explored. So these workshops are all about new approaches to collecting sporting heritage. The workshops come on the back of a project called Ignored Sporting Heritage, which ran from January to May this year. And it was a project specifically looking at ethnic diversity and sporting heritage and attempting to begin to challenge the predominantly white-centric bias in sporting heritage and look at new ways to include diverse communities in sporting heritage and explore the valuable and varied sporting histories of different communities. The project was a research project that just kind of looked to address, identify the situation and speak to people who with differing and unique and valuable insights. We spoke to a wide number of people during the project, including grassroots clubs, including curators and heritage professionals, people who work for anti-racism in sport organisations, quite a broad mix of people, just to get a perspective on what can be done to develop a more inclusive and representative sporting heritage in Britain. But one of the most kind of interesting angles of the project was hearing about and exploring the different approaches that various heritage professionals and organisations are taking to broaden their collecting and to bring different people and different communities into that collecting decision making and capturing those different voices and perspectives. So we developed these workshops to showcase a few of those examples. So in the first workshop, we heard from Jenny Vickers, who works at the Ahmed Iqbal Ullah Institute in Manchester, which isn't a sports-specific organisation, but they work with Black and minority ethnic communities across Greater Manchester, looking to capture the heritage of different communities and ensure that it's preserved. They have developed projects that have touched on sport in the past, and Jenny spoke briefly on those. Yeah, Jenny gave us a really valuable insight into the opportunities and challenges of working with communities who might not have previously engaged with before. And in the second workshop, we heard from Charlotte Goodhue at MCC Museum, who talked about the museum's work with specialists and academics to develop their collections, to build that knowledge of the collection and their area of collecting, and also to identify opportunities for collecting. Both of those recordings will be available soon. So I do urge you, if you weren't able to attend those two workshops, I do urge you to have a look back on those. And yeah, there's some really interesting information and discussion that came out of those. And the first workshop that with Jenny Vickers, Jenny shared some really valuable resources. If you're at all looking to work with communities that you've not worked with in the past, the Institute, Ahmed Iqbal Ullah Institute that Jenny used to work at, she's now moved on, has some really valuable resources which are all detailed in that workshop. So yes, so these workshops were devised with the intention of kind of showcasing a few different approaches to collecting, particularly kind of community-driven collecting, and to offer really a forum for discussion. And if anyone has questions, queries, or wants to kind of get input or advice on their approach to collecting sporting heritage, then that's really the purpose of this workshop. So as I said, towards the end of the workshop, we'll open the floor, and hopefully if any of you have questions or points of discussion, then we'll be really glad to hear them. Yeah, so that's just a bit of context. So today we're joined by Sarah Priestley from Curator at Watford Museum. And I'll let Sarah introduce herself, but Watford was a really kind of key organisation in our research and the work that they do with their communities, with the club, with Watford Football Club, and with fans is really inspirational. And it's a fantastic approach to collecting. So I'm going to pass over to Sarah now, if I can stop sharing my screen. Yeah, and I'll let you introduce yourself, Sarah.
Okay, thank you ever so much for having me here to speak, and particular thanks for bearing with me while I've been poorly. So it's really lovely to finally get around to doing this. I've got some slides to share, but just to drop them all in it, I actually got some of our fabulous sort of team here. So Jeff Wicken, who's actually a volunteer at the museum, but also at the trust and also at the football club, and the club's historian, and the editor of the Watford Treasury and the Great Save Project is with us, and he's actually one of the key people that delivers a lot of our aims here. We've also got the museum's new learning officer, Claire, with us online. So sorry, Claire, I didn't warn you about that. I think I warned Jeff, but you know, it's an incredible sort of team effort. Claire did all of our supporting heritage posts yesterday, and also really pleased that Bill's here as well, because he's an incredible support for us at Watford Museum, what we're doing going forward. So just to sort of mention them, you know, to say that it really isn't one person doing things at Watford, and that's one of the things that's so much fun, is it's such a team effort. But I will start sharing my screen. Hopefully this works. Okay, here we go. So I've already said hello. All right, let's see, make sure that this actually works now. Oh, there we go, fantastic. So just to introduce Watford Museum, we're small in terms of size of staff, budgets and visitor numbers museum in Hertfordshire, and we collect for the town of Watford. So football is one of our areas, but it's actually sort of part of the offer we have. So we collect and engage with anything that's related to the area of Watford. And it's a local authority run museum. It opened in 1981, and actually our work and our engagement, our community projects, and these things have all helped us to stay open and thrive in really difficult times. So that's very important for us. And hello from me. So I just thought it was actually be good to explain that I'm the curator of Watford Museum, and also I curate on behalf of Watford Football Club, because they hold our their collections with us. I'm also a Watford fan. I have a season ticket for Watford Football Club and also for Watford FC Women, and I feel I'm very much part of the family club that Watford really want to be and claim to be. I sit in the family stand. I come with my family. I sort of like participate in things with that, and so that gives me that sort of perspective, as well as the curatorial heritage side of knowing what it's like to be a fan and growing up in a really supportive community club environment. When I started working at Watford Museum, Watford Football Club, we had a gallery, which we still have, but there wasn't much in the way of active collecting, and football, to be honest, was not seen as real history. And actually, when I first started working on the projects that I'll talk about, I really met a lot of resistance, not from fans or the club, but actually from other museums who very much felt that it wasn't real history, it was populist, and that it wasn't, you know, something entirely appropriate to be doing. And so it's lovely that that's changed. So I've been working in sort of like with the history of Watford Football Club for 20 years now. So it's wonderful that it is such a big area and so celebrated now. So how we got started, there's very much a young Sarah with Graham Taylor and Terry Chalice, whose anniversary it is today. He was a local artist, and Graham Taylor hopefully needs no introduction. But my first ever exhibitions as a curator were the Golden Years exhibitions. I didn't choose the name, and in fact I didn't choose the theme. It kind of got dumped on me when I first arrived at Watford. Sarah, you're a football fan, would you like to do this exhibition, or two exhibitions that people had come up with? And the theme of them was Graham Taylor's eras at Watford. So 2002 was his first era, and then he returned, and so we had another exhibition that looked at second era. Now, to explain for people that don't know much about Watford, this was an incredible period of time in terms of success on the pitch. We got to our first ever FA Cup final, we got to Europe, we got to top flight football, we got to be sort of runners up in the top flight. You know, amazing things happened that as a Watford fan before that time you probably would never have imagined could happen. But it was also an incredible time off the pitch. The creation of the community club, the family club that Watford still feels it is today. So one of the photos here you can see is of the exhibition and the launch, but also you can see a photo of the family enclosure. So that became a really important theme, the community side. And I think because it was my first exhibition, and because I was a fan, I actually asked other fans what they thought. And I got in contact with the club, and the club were amazing, and they put an advert out and said to people, would you like to participate? And excuse my swearing, but there is a little quote here. One of the first people that got back to me was a guy who said, I came to a Watford Museum exhibition years ago about the football club, and it was shit. He said, and I thought I could do better than that. And he said, so I thought, when I saw your advert, maybe I should get in contact and help. So I actually got him to sit down and tell me all the things he hated, and it was so useful. But that was the beginning for me of that collaboration, because the club were amazing, the fans were incredible, and so many people participated. And in the end, it became the biggest exhibition in the museum's history, in terms of visitor numbers, but also in terms of the number of objects and the number of participants. So from that point on, I think it was that idea that I'd put things out there, and people, you know, fans and football clubs, they're enthusiastic and people care. So it was a perfect mix. So that led to a brilliant connection with the club and fans, which continues to this day and continues to evolve. One of the photos here is of an event we had for the Watford Treasury, which is an incredible publication that we've been really proud to be a part of. We've had a chance to write in the programme. We're part of a centenary project for Vicarage Road for next year. We're also part of the club's Watford Welcomes project, which is looking at inclusion. And we were able to provide a lot of history on that, but also support going forward. So it's lovely that there's always different ways that we can work together. Now, in terms of what that means in what could be seen as ignored history, one of the first areas that was so obvious to us was diverse history. The history of Black players, players from around the world. And for me growing up, I remembered, you know, it was John Barnes and Luther Blissett, who were two Black England players and real trailblazers from their time. But actually as a part of the project I was doing on the diverse history of Watford as a town, I was researching the club history, and I'd been told about the Cossa brothers. You can see Jack in the middle of this photo here. So they were two brothers who were of Indian origin. And that's where I particularly like to thank Bill and the book that he's done, and the collaborative work, because we knew about how much this meant to Watford's history, but it's been fantastic to find out about the wider context and sort of link that up on a more national level, because we have actually got the first two players of Asian origin to play professional football in the country. So we're working on an ongoing project there. There are other fantastic names, Tony Collins, who went on to be the first Black football manager. We've got Henry Roy Brown, Sammy Chung, and I meant put in here more recently Alban Gora, who has actually openly spoken about being trafficked to Europe from Africa as a young man when he was coming, hopefully was expecting to come and play football. You know, so there's incredible stories, and they really connect up. Watford's a very diverse town, so these stories really helped us to connect up with our community and to find new ways of working and share stories. And as this continues on, we've got the Trailblazers project that we've been part of, which is a Watford Football Club Academy project, which is funded by the Premier League. And you can see there, this is actually going to be a display that's going in the family stand at Watford Football Club, but there's also going to be an exhibition at the museum looking at trailblazers of colour who've played for Watford, and actually providing an inspiration for young people. Okay, so another project that we were part of was the Watford Football Club's Trust 25th anniversary project. Now, the reason why this was so important was it gave us a really lovely connection with the Trust, who we had been working with, but also it looked so much at the community side that was built up in that Graham Taylor era, and was fantastic because it particularly celebrated a lot of the women that worked for the club in the 80s. You've got the launch of the party launch there, Troy Deeney in the picture, but you've also got Anne Swanson, who's the lady in yellow at the top there. That was her in the family enclosure, which she used to run. And that's her with our manager sort of at the bottom here. She hadn't come to the football ground for many years, but as a result of the project, people were collecting memories about the community side, and people got in contact with her because she had such an amazing role encouraging children and families in the 80s at Watford Football Club. And actually, the reason why I include the Troy Deeney picture is because the same day that Troy was signing autographs in the club shop, Anne Swanson was outside, and we'd advertised it, and we actually had people waiting longer to meet Anne than they were to meet Troy Deeney, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And it's those kind of elements. It's not necessarily just about players, it's about the people that have created the club and made it so special. And that led on to us being invited to be part of the Trust's Golden Memories project. And you can actually see Jeff here, who is one of the major organisers and provides the heritage content for it. So the idea is to use Watford Football Club, and particularly its heritage, for working with people living with dementia. And it's an incredible project. It's been a huge success. And we're delighted that so much content from the museum is used and to be part of it. We've even had events at the museum, and we were part of this activity book here. And it really has been a lifeline, and it found a new way of working during lockdown and just keeps going from strength to strength. But it's wonderful to show just how different ways we can be collecting and sharing and learning from people who are living with dementia as well. Another aspect to our work was we started working with the Proud Hornets when they formed in 2019. So that we just basically saw that there were adverts to say that the Proud Hornets had been established, and we got in contact and said, hello, we work at Watford Museum, and would you like to be in contact? Now, of course, we've got Elton John, is an incredible icon for Watford Football Club, and you can't ask for much bigger as a gay icon. And we have an Elton John stage costume, and we have things to do with him in the collection. But it's wonderful to be actively collecting as well. So, for example, here on the left, we have the captain's armband from the very first Rainbow Laces match at Watford Football Club. And we collaborate on events and activities as well. So it's adding to our collections and making people feel welcome. But we get to be part of Hearts Pride, as you can see below. We also recently hosted a talk by trans football activist Sophie Cook, who came to speak to us at the museum. And in the middle there, we have the sticker that we actually created this year, so our first football sticker for Hearts Pride with the Proud Hornets. So it's an amazing collaboration, and it's a great way of bringing people into the museum and making them feel wanted. A new area for us, and this actually took us a really long time to kind of, I think, break into this, was Watford FC Women, who were previously called Watford Ladies. They've been going, you can see the picture on the left there. We don't know so much about the original early days of the club. We've been putting out messages for years, asking people, and people kept saying, oh yes, I've got something. But eventually we've been very lucky. We've now started to get donations of photographs and people sharing their stories. And now actually, as their relationship with the club becomes more official, and that's been sort of like a real breakthrough area for the women's football, then we're getting more of a collaboration on that side as well. So the programs, we now collect programs alongside the men's programs, and actually I was really delighted to see for the second month in a row Watford's goal of the month competition includes Watford Women, and we have Addie at the top here, who's actually acting fantastically as a sporting heritage ambassador for us at Watford. She came up through the trust scheme, and is actually the longest serving player for Watford Football Club, and has also spoken out a lot about Black Lives Matter as well. So it's wonderful to be able to work with her and look at the sort of like the different aspects of the club. So this is something that we're still growing at the moment. Now, why do we care about doing this? Sometimes people wonder whether or not it's just because it's popular, or if it's ticking a box or something like that, but it's really because it is the history of Watford. It's the history, you know, it's a club that stands for inclusion, stands for community, so it fits in so well with what we do. And it's really important in terms of helping us to grow our collections. So here you can see a few of the items that we've had in over the recent years. So we get everything from, one of my favourites was actually a children's book that was produced in the 80s about Watford Football Club. We have in the middle our Watford Observer clock, which is actually a very lovely rusty clock that means a lot to fans, our first ever trophy, and a really beautiful old football cap that's on loan to us. But collections come in all the time, and the more fans feel that they're part of things and included, the more they feel safe to donate to us. The club helps us to acquire things and to make purchases. And also we're learning, the more you work with fans and the club and all of the partners, the more we're able to learn about the town and the collections. So we just keep winning with that, and the more we're working all together, the more we get. But it isn't just Watford Football Club. As I said, I'm the curator for Watford Museum, and that is beyond just beyond football. And sometimes it's kind of easy to overlook that. And actually, this is where I'd like to particularly thank Sporting Heritage Network for helping us to grow our confidence with this. We were always used to football, but you know, we've got amazing other elements here. So you've got the Boxing Buxtons, 4 brothers who were incredibly successful boxers and local heroes and sort of local stars. And their father was actually came over to Watford in 1919 after serving in the First World War. And he'd come from the West Indies, and he became the patriarch of a sort of Watford family, the first Watford black family based in the town. So they've got an amazing sort of like story there on the social side, but also on the sporting side there. In the middle, you've got Anthony Joshua and his gold letterbox. The photograph is actually from the Black Lives Matter event in Watford last year, which was a really peaceful sort of event. And these are photos that were actually donated by members of the public. So you've got someone who's a real icon for the local community, as well as a sporting hero. At the bottom, you've got Joyce Smith. So we're so thrilled that she's part of the sort of like the women that have been celebrated yesterday, and well done to Claire for organising that. Joyce Smith won the first London Marathon, and actually she lived around the corner from me. My mum nearly knocked her down once. Maybe I shouldn't mention that, but we used to see her jogging and sort of like and running round near our house. So she was so much of a local celebrity as well, and still is. But you know, woman in her 40s winning a marathon is just amazing. And on the right, we're very proud of Margaret Morn, who wasn't born in Watford, but came to live here, was a local teacher, and really was a sort of local hero in her right in that way, but was the very first Paralympic gold medal winner, and was selected to light the torch at the 2012 Paralympics, and actually won golds in other disciplines in the Paralympics as well. So you know, we're learning all the time, and we're collecting more about this area, but it's always growing. So that was a bit of an overview, so I've rushed through it really quickly, but there's me actually at London Pride, sort of like with the Proud Hornets. So just to say that there's my contact details, which will be shared afterwards. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fascinating. And,
was that right?
Yeah, that was a real kind of whistle-stop tour through some really kind of fabulous projects and initiatives. I think what you said at the beginning, how you know, when you started exhibiting on Watford, and this idea that football is just populist and it doesn't belong in music, it just baffles me that suggestion. Especially as you were saying, you know, it's so integral to so many people's lives, and the challenging histories that can be brought out of football.
Absolutely.
It's not just about, you know, club successes, it's about community. Do you still get that perception from people, who visit the museum, or is that kind of in the past?
No, actually, and we never really had it from Watford people. And that was one of the things. I mean, we did the Golden Years exhibition, but actually, when Graham Taylor sadly passed away, we were asked to do exhibitions about his life as a memorial, which we did with, actually we organised with his family. So very poignant, but we had so many people who come in who don't like football. So people come in because actually Watford Football Club is so much part of the community that even if they never go and see a football match, they care about the club or they care about the people. So many people in Watford will have lived next door to a Watford player or know someone. It's that kind of town where you'll still see people sort of wandering around, and there's still that sort of strong connection. And I've got my little ones, not so little now, they're nearly 14, but not only have they met their favorite players, but they've played football with them. It's that kind of place. So that, I think that's really important. And I never actually had anything, interestingly either, about being a woman with Watford. Never had, and I think again because the club had so many women working for them, and that they put so much work into women being part of football and the family club, and including women in advertising, that actually it's just seen as very much the norm as well, which is lovely. But yeah, no, that's all changed now.
That's good. Just one more question from me, then I'll pass on to everyone else. But I wondered if you ever have if it ever presents a bit of a challenge in collecting and interpreting the history of the club, in balancing that history between the institutional history of Watford as a football club and that kind of community, not necessarily nostalgia, but that kind of community memory and that community heritage of the club, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Or whether it kind of interweaves together.
I think it so interweaves, and like the idea of how people connect up, like Jeff is an example of that. That's how Watford is, and the fact that there is such a kind of community feel and people do have that connection. I think also the club have very much supported that, and I think it's worked really well for us that they have that element where, because we aren't paid to be part of the club, we aren't paid staff of the club, we have that little element of being slightly removed so that we can work with anyone, whether they're happy with the club or not. Fans go through phases where they can fall out with their club, but they don't ever have to fall out with the museum. So that's been really nice. So we've got that slight little gap, which gives us, and the club has never censored us on anything or said we couldn't work with anyone. So we just sort of, we say, oh, we're doing this, or we kind of let them know and include them, but we're very much allowed to kind of get on with things. But I think that's because we've also built up that trust and that connection over the years. But it's lovely because they do support us in terms of purchasing things. There isn't exactly a budget, it's more the fact that we kind of go to them with something exciting and they get excited too. So, which is lucky. But again, that could all change with a different owner or a different sort of thing. So again, from our point of view, football collections can be so at risk, but being in a established museum with an accreditation process gives us that different element as well. So I don't know if there's many examples like that in the country, but it seems to work for us.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a really kind of fruitful partnership, and yeah, it clearly gives you so much opportunity to explore really rich and kind of meaningful histories as well through that kind of lens of football and sport. So I'm going to pass on now. So we've got just over 20 minutes left, and if anyone has any comments or questions for Sarah or for either of us on Twitter. Oh, sorry, Claire, you've put your hand up.
Yeah, Sarah, that was just amazing. Thank you. That was just wonderful, and thank you as well. You're just such an inspiration, and like you and the rest of your team, you're
including you.
Yeah. But you know, your energy and your commitment is just infectious, because I have to admit, and you know, that I was not the greatest football fan when I came, but yes, it is totally a part of our community. And the way that you're constantly updating, you know, not just with football, but now we have Emma Wiggs. We're proud to have her as Paralympian. So my question was, I know it's tricky, which do you think is your favourite item in the collection, football collection at Watford?
Oh, in
I know you mentioned one.
Yeah, in terms of the football one, there are a few that just mean so much. One of them, there is actually a little pen which Jeff is the sort of like a proud owner of, actually more than one of these pens, but that I particularly love. There's wonderful things like the items relating to Graham Taylor, but actually for me it's the Watford Observer clock, that really big lump, because what I love especially is it doesn't make any sense to anyone who isn't a Watford fan from that era, but for them everyone's just like, oh yes, and it has such connections with people, and also we have such funny stories because we've actually rescued it twice now. So it had been sitting around the back of the stand. A previous groundsman had just tried to get rid of it, I think, because it had been in a store. So the club helped us rescue it when we found that out, and then we gave it back to the club, and then it needed rescuing again. So I feel like that kind of personal bond as well with that item. But that's what I love as well, and that's actually one of the big things that I didn't say with doing that first exhibition, was actually listening to fans. It wasn't just about things that I remember. There's certain objects that connect with me as a fan, but also finding out from other people. You know, it isn't always the shiniest trophy or the biggest, glossiest item. It's actually those really small things that bring back amazing memories. And that's what I love, is actually that sort of enthusiasm and that connection. So yeah, I think the Watford Observer clock.
And did it win? Was it runner up in the?
It was runner-up. It was beat by a stuffed fox or something from Tring in the Hertfordshire Museum Object of the Year, which I will take to my grave.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Claire.
Marcus, you've raised your hand.
Hi, hello everybody. I'll just declare who I am, because I may not be known to anyone on the call, but I certainly recognise Jeff. I'm one of the historical advisors to Stockport County Football Club in the Northwest. We don't have a historian, but we have people that kind of help. I just have to say, I'm really, I'm not surprised, by the way, because I know I've spoken to Jeff and the Great Save group, and you know what I've seen today is a brilliant blueprint, really, for what I would love us to be able to do in Stockport. We have all the elements that you have, but we just don't have a Sarah Priestley. Sadly, I don't know if you want to move to the Northwest. It's a beautiful part of the country, but
it is. I've got lots of fam from up there, so yeah. So actually, I've got family in Stockport, so yeah, it's an amazing place. Yeah, I love it.
Well,
and good breweries as well. So yeah. Honestly, I'm certainly welcome to come up and speak to people. What I hoped to show today is that although we do loads of different things, so much of it is a team effort, and it's because out there, you know, with sport, you know, and certainly I know most about football with this, is you have got people that care and they want to help and they're interested, and actually football is such an amazing way of reaching out to people. We're so proud. The last season, you know, we've just been promoted, but we had a season where we were relegated from the Premier League, and I was so proud because that was the season actually that we were helping the NHS. And last week Watford invited 150 Afghan refugees to be at the football ground and things like that. They're so important, but actually everything that I do is nothing special. Jeff can tell you that I think actually, because I've got people around me, that my football knowledge, I'm sure, gets less as I've got more and more support, and more amazing people, because there's such a team effort. So I think that's the thing I would say, is that actually all these things are done without budget. They're not really done with any money or particularly massive amounts of time either sometimes. You know, it's more just a case of getting to collaborate with people. And so much nowadays can be done on social media as well to get stories out there. So definitely, but we're delighted to be in contact, and lovely, an excuse to go back up to see family as well.
Right. Well, sadly, we'll have to get you up without it being a game when Watford are playing Stockport, because if we wait that long, probably we'll all be gone. But no, I mean, I'm fascinated about structure, and I know Jeff and the Great Save guys. You know, one of the great challenges is there are people like myself and Jeff and many others who have got and amassed these, in some cases, amazing archives of club memorabilia, and we don't really want to sell them, because that's not why we ever bought them in the first place. But they are of great value, historically and financially in some cases. And it's how do you hand these over in a way that you're not going to hand them over to some maniac owner who's going to sell them next week when we go into administration. So it's a really interesting challenge. Sounds like you've got it really well done. You know, we have a museum in Stockport called the Staircase Museum, a great museum, wonderful, kind of celebrates the history of Stockport and its history and hatting and all the various other things. And there is a little section on the football club. But for instance, they won't take loans. You have to give everything to them. They won't take a loan, and you know that of course creates a problem if someone's in that kind of, absolutely, will I ever need this collection? If I die, will my wife need, you know, all those things that we all struggle with. About, it's very easy to say, oh, I'm going to give away a collection that's potentially worth tens of thousands of pounds, and then you find that, you know, something happens in your life. So I'd be really interested to get your understanding of how you've done that, and how you archive it. And it's getting that balance, because you do need proper curators. You need historically trained individuals who know how to look after old programs and medals and trophies and caps, and, you know, well, we don't have many of those at Stockport, but and I finally, before I'll shut up then, I'm very interested about the club supporting you, because we have never gone to the club to ask for financial support, and I think that's very interesting that Watford are happy. But again, they'll only do that because they know the items are not going to go and then be resold on. And you've obviously got that level of trust, which I think is, and it's
asking the right person as well. You know, if I went to certain people in the club, they probably have no idea what I was talking about. So, you know, the person I actually go to make purchases for our acquisitions is the head of communications, and it's because they're a huge Watford fan and they care about the heritage. So actually, it really is a case of I send him a picture, go, look what I've seen, and he goes, buy, because he gets excited about it.
Brilliant.
If Rich left, then, you know, then that could change again. But that's why they actually made it a formal arrangement to sort of like help with that a few years ago, to make it that we were the official collecting museum, to just make sure that things were on an official line. And actually sometimes the flexibility of it not being part of a organisation means that it can be easier to work in some ways. But also really happy to talk to you about things like how museums can be working. As a rule, we try to avoid taking too many loans. However, we've got certain areas where we do, and football is one of them. And Jeff can say, you know, with the Treasury, you've got quite a few of the Treasury members have got amazing collections. And actually, people who are collectors, most of them, or a lot of them, certainly in Watford, they don't just do it to hide it away. They would love other people to see them. They'd love to be able to share the fun of it. And that's actually something, you know, that's been a joy. You know, you've actually got not just one club historian, you've got 10 people who are fantastic, and you've got other, you know, you've got collectors, and it just all, sometimes, you know, we do actually sometimes talk about it. In terms of, say, for example, if something comes up for sale, you know, how does that work when you're working with collectors as well? But I think there's a real sense of community with the collectors and the Treasury about wanting to share things and support each other, and that works really well. So thank you, though.
Just picking up on what you were saying, Marcus, about advice on how to catalogue and look after your collection and artifacts. I'm just going to put a link in the chat from Heritage Key, which is the archive linked to Huddersfield University, and they've got two quite useful films about what to think about if you're thinking of depositing with an archive, which might not be the route you want to go down, but they talk about the sort of information and how they like collections to be prepped. And I've been chatting to Dave Smith, who's one of the archivists there, and he said the thing that they always try and get across is if you are looking to either loan or deposit an archive, your material, either with a formal archive or with a museum, don't ever think that it all needs to be beautifully catalogued or listed in advance, because that's something they would really like to work with you as a group to do, because although they're the specialists in how to care for the material, it's yourself and the group around you that have got all that specialist knowledge on the club, so they wouldn't be able to do what you do. So it's about, going back to what Sarah was saying, it's about building this partnership. I should also do a quick plug for the Sporting Heritage Toolkit, which will be out later this month. There'll be masses and masses of advice in there, quite light touch, easy to understand advice about how to care and catalogue collections, and lots of resources in there. And if you're ever in a position where you are looking for somewhere, and this goes for everybody, for somewhere to find a long-term home for your collection, Sporting Heritage always more than happy to broker partnerships. So don't ever feel that you're on your own trying to find a location, because that's something that we would happily help and support you with. Right, Jeff, sorry, I should jump out again. And Jeff, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I should say, I suppose, that as Watford fans, we are lucky. You know, we're lucky that we have people at the club who are supportive of the heritage around the club, and that can certainly change. And you know, it's true in Watford's case that there have been periods of time, quite significant periods of time, when the people in charge of the club haven't been interested at all. And we have many stories of stuff being rescued from skips. Sarah told the story of the Watford Observer clock. I've published a couple of others on the Watford Observer blog. And you know, the skips in question have been outside the football ground, and former marketing directors of the club have chucked loads of documents into it, and former groundsman's assistants have jumped into the skip and taken them out again and passed them around to fans. So we're lucky that I mean, some of that is just happenstance, you know, what has survived and what hasn't. So we're lucky with the owners. We're also lucky with the museum, and to have someone running the museum who is a fan, and you know, she's been telling that story. It seems to me, from my perspective, that town museums are really missing a trick. There are many towns have museums, and very few of them have any sort of significant football collection. Maybe because the people who tend to be appointed as museum curators generally don't have very much interest in football. But actually, football is, you know, one could argue, the great social glue of our times now. And there was a very good piece by Matthew Syed in the Times this week, I think on Wednesday, and he builds it around Brentford, but you know, he expresses very well that strand in society now. So I think that, you know, somehow museum curators need to be encouraged to realise this, that in fact, by representing football within what they do, they'd actually be representing a very significant strand in our sort of national heritage of all types. But also, it would allow them to put on exhibitions or permanent displays that people would actually come in and visit.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
it all
such
fits together.
an easy win. It
I can't
really
understand why they don't do it.
I absolutely agree with you, Jeff. It's such an easy win, and in terms of getting people in, but it's such an amazing part of the heritage. And in Watford, and I'm sure this is exactly the same in so many other towns, everything is so interlinked. So say, for example, we've got medals relating to Timberlake, who was sort of involved with Watford Football Club and the organisation. Now he's got a set of allotments named after him because he was also a local freeman of the borough and he was a local politician. And you find time and time again that the doers in Watford town were also the doers with Watford Football Club. The fact that we're based in the former Benskins mansion, Benskins had a really strong connection with Watford Football Club. We were known as the Brewers for quite a while. So and yeah, we wouldn't be able to do half as much with the diverse history of Watford, with the LGBTQ history, because especially that's such a hidden history. Other than Elton John and the things that we have with the Proud Hornets, and we've got some more recent testimony that people have shared, the only things that we had in the collection were actually sort of workhouse punishment books that were punishing homosexual activity. So that's heartbreaking to think about, and actually that we've got something that's so positive and such a wonderful heritage, and yeah, there's so many amazing things with it, and it does really connect with everything we do, and certainly I have found there's a difference now, Jeff, that I do find a lot more curators are interested and people are more interested, but it has been something I've heard from quite a few people at other places that they haven't had that interest from their local museums, and sometimes I find it heartbreaking when you visit a new museum that's had a refurbishment and there's hardly a thing on football in it, when that town is, for me, what I know about that town is its football club. So, and actually football fans will go and visit. If I go to a different place, I want to see about the football of that town as well, because there's actually a tourism element. If I'm going to a club to visit for a match, I'm really interested to find out more as well. So tapping into that has been really lovely, because actually it's not just bums on seats, it's the connection that you get and the community side of things.
Speaking of it, so we're just coming towards the end, and sorry, Mark, I realise you've got another question, but I just wanted to jump in there, Sarah, and just wondered if we could hear more from you about how you maintain that connection with the community and sustain those relationships, and whether what kind of work you have to put in to kind of attract other fans and audiences from the community who you might not currently have those connections with.
I think part of that is, and it's always growing, and we're always learning, and there's people that we connect up with. I think we've got a reputation, hopefully, at Watford of being somewhere that's welcoming. So we also have quite a lot of arts activities that go on, so people tend to come to us and say, oh, we've heard that Watford Museum's open. We provide a venue quite often for community activities. So if someone wants to do an event, an exhibition or a project, so that's one of the ways that, because we've got a venue, that we can be proactive. But also it's always growing. So in the early days, when Watford were doing their work on Watford Welcomes and trying to encourage people, they were doing connectivity there, then they didn't know many people. But now they put people in contact with us, so they'll come across someone and they'll say, oh, Sarah, you should meet so and so. Claire, we came in contact with through a brilliant project called Brick by Brick, who we were working with, who said, oh, you must meet Claire. And then we say, oh, Brick by Brick, you must meet so and so. And actually that's very much how a town should work, but it's everything, from working with local cafes through to sort of like mental health charities, so and it's always growing. But I think it's having an open attitude. We're very small and we don't have a huge staff, so we don't tend to kind of go out foraging for groups either. It's more a case of just having that welcome, that people know that they can work with us, and words are seen to get around, but always being smiling and being grateful, I think, as well. I've done presentations on partnership working, and I say it's a bit like dating, that you've got to be someone that you would want to date. So you've got to be someone you'd want to work with, and always being so happy to work with people. And I think that can put people off as well, is if they've had a very sort of stiff experience with a museum, or very formal experience, it can make them feel less welcome. So that's very important.
Yeah, I can see how that takes so much kind of underlying work though, to kind of to keep that, you know, message up, and to be welcoming, I think, you know, to be kind of,
and that's a team effort as a museum. There's no, you can't have officers or curators that say, oh, we want to do this, if you haven't got front of house staff that really care and want to work with people as well. So it's definitely a team attitude.
I've got 2 minutes left. Marcus, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, no, it was just an observation that I you know, one of the things I really like, and again, I'm very conscious looking through my prism as a bit of a, you know, as we all are, collectors of football memorabilia, we can be a little bit boring and a bit narrow in our view of what's important. But you know, what you've done is you've thrown that prism, has thrown it out to turn that football club as a hub into something much more interesting around, you know, LGBT and women and children, and you know, economics of your town are represented in the programs, the sponsors, you know, the brewers, you know, Stockport have had the same. And you know, you can, with a bit of insight and a bit of intelligence, you can really use this as something to be interesting to a lot of people who might not have had any interest in football. And I think that's the key, isn't it? You know, I'll just say just one final point. I, as an 11-year-old boy, went to Stockport Library and asked them to have a look at this section on Stockport County, which was 100 years old nearly at that time, you know, and they had nothing, absolutely zero. And they said, yeah, we used to have boxes, a couple of boxes of old football programs. And Jeff, you'll know where I'm going with this. You know, Stockport County 1920 football programs are like hen's teeth, and they're very valuable. Even in the 1970s, they had value, and they'd all been stolen. You know, they've been left out in a box on a desk, and they'd all been nicked. And of course, that's that whole part of that process of making sure that these valuable assets are also well looked after. And again, I think that's something why you need professionals who know what they're doing with this stuff to protect it. So, but again, great. And Sarah, we'll carry on this conversation. You have the Articles of Association for Watford Football Club. I think, Jeff, you highlighted to me, they're actually from Stockport County.
They are.
They put a line through the name and wrote Watford FC. And we've never seen our Articles of Association from 1908. So it was an absolute joy to find out that document existed and was in a museum in Watford with a line through it. And so I'm desperate to get to Watford Museum. But anyway, thank you.
You might find them in Company's House.
Ah, good point. Yeah, I'd rather find them in Watford Museum with a line through it than someone who's put Watford over the top. You'd love to know how the hell did that happen, you know.
And that's what's so lovely about sharing. And just say very quickly that anyone who's here who'd like to come and see us or would like to chat about things, we'd be so grateful, because we learn all the time. And don't ever apologise for being one of those enthusiasts, because that passion and that excitement of it is amazing, and that is really infectious. And that's where I learned everything from, was people who were willing to sit down and chat to me, because I had experience as a fan in one way, but you know, I'm always learning. So don't ever apologise for having that amazing passion for your club.
Okay. I'll ask you, Sarah, to speak to my wife, because she has never quite understood. But there we go. That's a different subject.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's been a really inspiring and really informative conversation today. Just before we wrap up, I've got a couple of things to plug. So if anyone's interested in hearing more about kind of community-driven football heritage-related projects, another couple of projects that we came across during the Ignored Sporting Heritage Project included a film by an academic called Ole Jensen, looking at the history of Black Millwall supporters, which is a fascinating. He produced a film called Black and White Millwall, which explores the kind of complexities of race at Millwall. And it's really worth a watch if anyone's interested. I put a link to it in the chat. Also, Arts Heritage Organisation in London called Digital Works did a project on Brentford a couple of years ago, pre-promotion. And again, it's an oral history film, and it's a very kind of similar ethos to the work you do at Watford, Sarah, in that it tries to capture quite a diverse array of perspectives on different Brentford fans. There's a kind of strong showing from the LGBTs, the Brentford LGBTQ group, and again, kind of diverse fans represented. So yeah, give those two things a watch. The links are in the chat. Also on the Ignored Heritage front, we've got a couple of podcasts in the pipeline. One's out already, looking at Punjabi wrestling, if anyone's interested, with Digital Works, and it's interviewing their lead as well as an expert on the history of Punjabi wrestling. Really, really fascinating conversation. And we've also got a podcast coming up on that very same Black and White Millwall project, which is coming out later this month for Black History Month. A really, really fascinating conversation with one of the participants in that project, who is a Black Millwall supporter, and just really kind of quite eye-opening, insightful kind of history into the club. And also we've got as part of the Sporting Heritage Conference coming up later this month on 20th of October, we've got a panel discussing ethnic diversity and sporting heritage. We've got a really, really good panel of people. We've got including Amadit Panesar, who is currently doing a PhD at Leicester at the moment on British Asian cricket. An academic called Daniel Kilvington, who's an expert on British Asian football. And we've also got the head of content at the National Football Museum joining us, Dr. Laura Crossley. So I think it'll be a really, really, really interesting discussion. So if anyone is coming to the conference, we'll be in that first slot after the keynote speaker on the Wednesday. So that's all my plugging done. Just to say, yeah, thanks again so much, Sarah, for your presentation and your time today. The work you do at Watford is amazing, and I think it's really, really valuable community-driven activity that is not only an inspiration to other sporting heritage organisations, but an inspiration to heritage organisations in general, so many of whom just do not make that connection between community and the history they preserve. So yeah, thank you again so much for taking the time and for your presentation, and thank you everyone else for joining us and for sharing your comments and questions. Yeah, hopefully see you all at some point in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just jump in quickly and just say that I'll send all the wrap up for this session and the other two in this series and send them around to everybody, so everybody's got them as a full set. And yeah, and hope to see everybody soon. Thank you for your time today.